Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Juneteenth edition of Drag Story Hour Arizona. I'm here with Sassy SD DeMornay.
Hello, happy Juneteenth, everybody. And we're
Yeah.
also joined by my little baby Nugget. He's going to be sitting on my lap listening to the stories with us because he needs
Yeah.
to learn his history as well.
Yes, let's dive into Juneteenth. But first, if you're here for the first time, Drag Story Hour promotes early literacy with inclusive stories about everyone. And we know in a time like this, some things may be censored, banned, or maybe not even talked about, like these stories today. So, um, they're not on the banned book list, uh, but sometimes you don't know of these books because maybe they haven't been introduced. But we're here, and we're gonna read them today, and you're gonna learn a little bit about Juneteenth. Shall we?
We shall.
The importance of Juneteenth. Juneteenth celebrates June 19th, 1865, a day when Union troops of the Civil War reached Galveston, Texas, and announced the war's end. Yes, but it was a little bit of a delay because the war had ended, and Juneteenth was like, you know,
It was 2 years after the war had ended. So they were
yeah.
still the last set of enslaved people in the United States for 2 solid years.
Yes. This event marked the day that slaves were free. Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration that acknowledges the end of slavery in the United States. But still, that whole gap of time
Yeah.
that happened was probably like the most important part of this milestone, uh, especially in the South, in the deep, deep South. So, we're about to get started, and what we like to do is get you ready for the story hour as we get into our Juneteenth stories. So, we have a little song for you, and this one is if you're ready for a story. We'll do the hand motions and do it with you first, and then you can do it along with us. Okay? If you're ready for a story, take a seat. If you're ready for a story, take a seat. Clap your hands and stomp your feet. Make your hands all nice and neat. If you're ready for a story, take a seat. So, take a seat. I forgot the hand motions. Take a seat. I usually put my hands together all the time, but that's not maybe. I don't know. But anyhow, uh take a seat, take a seat, clap your hands, stomp your feet. And since this is virtual, pretend like you can see my feet. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
Same.
Um, make your hands all nice and neat. We're gonna bring them together and we're gonna put them in our lap.
And I cross my hands if you don't like putting your hands together. I put them
Ah,
like this and then put them on my lap as well.
correct. Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Very
Alternative. I love
delicate.
it. And then you do it one more time. Take a seat. Okay, we're gonna do it one more time. If you're ready for a
Before a
story,
story, take a
take a
seat.
seat. If you're ready for a story, take a seat. Clap your hands and stomp your feet. Make your hands all nice and neat. If you're ready for a story, take a seat.
Yeah.
Good. Good. I feel like I see you at home. Yes, just are seen, and we see that you're ready for the story hour. And first up, um, Sassy has a story for you.
Yes. I'm excited because I don't think we've ever read the story in any story hours. So I'm super excited for this one.
Oh, exclusive.
Brand new books. So this one is called
Enjoy.
Do You Know Them? Families Lost and Found After the Civil War. Now, the Civil War is important to Juneteenth because the Civil War happened and ended in 1863. Juneteenth, this celebration, was 1865. So these were a lot of families that were separated and couldn't find each other. So those were important stories, but we're going to find out specific ones. So, do you know them? And this is written by Shayna Keller, illustrated by Laura Freeman. Okay. After the war ended, everyone was missing someone. Letty was missing her family. They had been sold and lost long before enslavement was abolished. Were they looking for her too? Every day, Letty saved her pennies. To earn money, she helped Miss Ida sew. She swept the floors at Mr. Young's store, and when Uncle Charlie came home from the docks, she helped him make ropes to sell. Then they practiced reading the newspaper. She didn't buy candy or toys. She saves for something better, something that would bring her whole family together. Have you saved enough yet, Letty? Miss Ida asked her in the morning. Almost, Letty said. How many pennies have you got now? Mr. Young asked her in the afternoons. 22, Mr. Young, Letty said as she swept. Every week, Letty read the advertisements in the newspapers with Uncle Charlie. She held on to them, and again, she underlined the words she wanted to use in her own ad: daughter, father, mother, brother, aunt, sister, wife, uncle, cousin, last heard from. As she grew older, Letty learned to read on her own, but a lot of people couldn't. So she read to the congregation at church. She read every advertisement and imagined her family listening to the same ads, waiting to hear from her and Uncle Charlie. Information wanted. My husband, George W. Burton of Company A, 115th Regiment, United States Army. When last heard from in 1865, he was in the hospital of Brownsville. Any information will be thankfully received by his wife. Address Jane Burton, number 20, Acorn Alley, Philadelphia. My wife's brother still works in the coal mines up in Wheeling, Mr. Young said. That's not too far from Brownsville. We'll send a letter and find out. Betty wondered if her brothers worked in the same coal mines, or maybe they worked on the docks like Uncle Charlie. Wherever they were, she hoped they were still together. Folks didn't always have much to go on, whether it was money or information. But Letty was glad everyone did what they could to help one another find their lost family members. She sure was missing hers. With a gentle nod from the pastor, Letty took a deep breath and continued reading. Do you know them? I would like to find my people. My mother's name was Charlotte King, and when I was sold, I had 5 brothers: Alfred, John, Reason, Robert, and Paul King. At the same time, they were sold to Seth Woodruff, a trader. My mother was sold to Mr. Hunter at Campbell Courthouse. I have been living in Hopkinsville, Kentucky for 11 years. My name was Rose King. Any information will be gladly received by Mrs. Rose Cardle, Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Uncle Charlie looked up. Miss Ida did too. Letty wondered if they knew where any of the kings might be. Just as her heart tightened up with too many feelings, Miss Ida spoke. I knew a young man named Reason. The name stuck out. It sure did. But he didn't look excited when he said it. Miss Ida and I met him along one of the hidden routes. I believe he was on his way to England. She said he said he knew someone there who could help him start a new life. Uncle Charlie explained. After his brothers died in the uprising fighting for their freedom, he wanted to get as far away from this country as he could. Letty felt awful. There was so much he wanted to say, but all the words got stuck inside. Well, send a message. Whether it's good news or bad, every little bit helps, the pastor said. Letty held the newspaper up high and read the next advertisement. This time, her heart filled with happiness. She looked at her uncle with the blaze of hope burning in her eyes. Found his father, Salt Lake City. Many thanks for the notice in Seeking for the Lost column. I have found my father. Respectfully, S.G. Wilson. Applause erupted. Hallelujah! Everyone shouted. That's good news indeed, the pastor said. Tears were wiped and smiles lingered as joy soared through the room. That wasn't cheap, Uncle Charlie said. Each ad cost at least 50 cents. Letty knew. She kept a track of how much each newspaper charged to place an advertisement for lost ones. But she also knew Mr. Wilson didn't spend his money on the notice just to say thank you. This was proof that the advertisements worked. This was why Letty had saved her pennies throughout all the weeks and months and years. She would finally find her family. Letty had to clear her throat several times before she could finish reading. When she sat back down, she didn't hear much else of what the pastor said. She held on to the newspapers like before, but this time she circled Mr. Wilson's entire ad again and again. The next morning, Letty walked to the office of the Richmond Planet. Her steps were as light as air, even as she clutched a heavy treasure close to her heart. She handed a carefully folded piece of paper to Mr. Jones, the man at the desk. Then she opened her purse. For a minute, Letty could hardly breathe. The words on the paper, the copper coins she worked so hard for, they felt more valuable than gold. Are you here to buy a paper, Letty? Mr. Jones asked. Letty's smile was as bright as the sun, and her voice sang like the birds. No, sir. I'm here to place an ad for Uncle Charlie and me. She said, did you hear? A man in Salt Lake City found his father. I did, Mr. Jones said, but his smile faltered. I know what you're thinking, Letty said as she placed 50 cents on the desk. Mr. Jones could see the determination in Letty's eyes. He didn't dare say one bad thing. You give us hope, Letty, he said instead. Mr. Wilson's ad gave Letty hope. She held tight to that hope as she continued to work, save, and read. Her reading has improved, but sharing the ads was never easy. There were so many lost ones. As would she ever find her mother, her father, her brothers, and her sisters? Would Uncle Charlie ever find his wife and children? It took longer than Letty could have imagined, but one day she stood in front of the congregation and an ad jumped out at her. Letty's hand shook. Letty could barely read through the tears that filled her eyes. She could barely speak. Uncle Charlie, Uncle Charlie, she managed to say. She knows them. Letty whispers, turned into a shout. She knows them. Hallelujah, the pastor cried. Praise be, echoed the congregation. Uncle Charlie cried too as Letty read the ad again and again. She knows them. Dear sir, I saw an advertisement in your paper last week when Charlie Oliver wants to find some of his relatives. I am well acquainted with all of his people who now live in King William County, Virginia. For further information, call number 911 North 32nd Street, Miss R. W. Williams. The end. So there is an author's note. Basically, what Letty was doing was going to church to read the newspaper to see if they could find family members. Well, that was a very common practice after the Civil War. Is Formerly enslaved people would go to church to connect with each other, but also to see if anyone had found their family members because they were putting out ads to find them. And sometimes, like you heard in the story, someone would find their
Mhm.
family member, someone would find somebody else's family member through those ads. So I know it seems so like, oh, newspapers, yeah, but that was what we had back then, and that's how people
That was how it
communicated.
worked.
So I
Mhm.
think that's a beautiful way for reconnections to happen. So that was lovely. So yeah, I love reading that story.
Um, yeah, well, not that long ago, for
I
us
know.
anyway. We used to find out things in the paper before we found out things, so quickly. Um, Now we find out information, like, at the snap of as it's happening, as it
Yeah.
so, um, with that being said, when did you learn about Juneteenth?
Um, I learned about Juneteenth. I was around, I want to say 12 years old, and
Mhm.
my paternal grandmother was very Afrocentric. She was the one who taught me about Kwanzaa. She's the one who
Oh,
taught me like
wow.
Black history. So she was very much like, this is something important. So she had told me about Juneteenth, and we went to this is when we were in Philly still. We went to
Mhm.
a barbecue in Fairmount Park that they were having a Juneteenth celebration, and the whole park is just full of people. And there's music and there's barbecues, and there's just it was such a good time of connection, and there are performances of like Pan African dancers. It was such a
Oh,
beautiful
wow.
thing to learn and to see. And I'm forever grateful for her for those memories because those helped me embrace that side of my history and my culture that I wasn't aware of. So shout
Mm.
out to my grandma, Catherine.
I feel like I was a late bloomer to a lot of things, including culture and history. I feel like there were pieces that I knew, there were pieces that were passed on through family, but I didn't find out about Juneteenth until like later in life. Um, but I feel like I was a little disappointed. Is that that's a good word to put it in, like a little disappointed, because I felt like either I don't know, when you find out something that you should have known all along, it feels like it's been like held back from you or something.
Yeah.
It feels like there's this big piece of you that's missing, and I keep finding out things,
Oh
as
yeah.
we all know, that I'm like, "Oh, so let me put this puzzle piece in here." So, we're learning sometimes right along with you as we read the books or as we, follow the journey, because it seems that some information kinda was withheld because notice Sassy said that there their family was the one that passed on the story. It wasn't their schooling, and
Yeah.
that's where I feel like I missed the change. I was like, "But I don't remember
Oh, I was
what."
not taught anything about like Juneteenth in school, and African American history was an elective.
Yeah,
So, and as an elective, they didn't get deep dives. It was like, here's the top five African American history. It's like Thurgood, like literally, it was the same seven black people. It was Thurgood Marshall. It was Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Booker T. Washington, Madam C.J. Walker,
yeah.
Matthew Henson, like
Little
and Charles
sprinkles of
Drew. So it was
Rosa
like
Par
this.
little sprinkles of Rosa Parks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like, but it was the same seven black people that were rotated through history, and it was like, oh, well,
Mm,
they did this, and like when you wanted to get into sports, they're like, well, here's Althea Gibson and Arthur Ashe and
and always heard about Jackie Robinson. I was like,
yes,
"What
here's
but who
Jackie
else?"
Robinson, and here's what's that man's name that went ran the Olympics in Germany? Like
Yeah,
I hear
just
about all these people, but that was
but
it.
as an adult, you become very versed, especially
Oh
with
yes,
access to information. Uh,
and being the inquisitive child that I was, I wanted to know more, you know. And I found
mhm.
out about Sojourner Truth. I found out about Marcus Garvey. I found out about Malcolm X. I found out about James Baldwin. Like, and queer
There
Black
we
history.
go.
That's a whole nother subset of like
You're like, "Who?"
gay Black people. What? Yeah. So like finding out these people existed in history also was like, wait a second. Y'all told me
Yeah,
they weren't real. So
yeah.
So it's
So
always, it's much like you said, I feel like those were things that were left out, like in education, which we should all be learning, regardless on our backgrounds or any of that. I think that's just history that should be learned. So it doesn't repeat itself because when you continue
mhm,
to do the same things, it's gonna repeat itself.
mm,
Did you
mhm,
know?
mhm. So let's before we get on the soapbox,
Yes.
let's go on to the next story. The next story I have for you is Free at Last. It is a Juneteenth um, poem, and has a cover, beautiful cover. And I always warn folks that I know we enjoy book covers because they protect the books and they are wonderful pieces of art. But it's hard for me to hold the book and give you the attention you need. Um, let's see here. Oh, whoa, we get close. Anyhow, let's see. Free at Last, a Juneteenth poem by Sigourney Kincaid Roll. I'll do my best to hold it up. There we go. Um, and it's illustrated by Alex Bostick. Ooh, we're already starting with a beautiful, beautiful illustrations. The news arrived in Galveston. The war is over. President Lincoln has decreed the Emancipation Proclamation declares who all who live in bondage here shall from now on until be free. After 300 years of forced bondage, hands bound descendants of Africa picked up their souls, all that they owned, leaving shackles where they fell on the ground, headed for the nearest resting place to be found. Some went no further than the shack out back, oft only a shed, hard ground for a bed, hard labor, no pay, but the will to survive. Though they couldn't call it their own, they declared, "This is home." Take what you have, right? Some ran as far as they could into the service of the man on the neighboring land, working for a pittance, and a little plot of space, much like they did when enslaved. Some went to the nearest place of the Lord, to some hollow place in the brush, or to a clearing in a grove where folk gathered neath a still standing tree and sang, "Thank you, Jesus, for delivering me." Thank you, Jesus. Mhm. Some made a beeline for the closest dance hall, picking a tune, singing a song, toasting the Union and Lady Luck, setting the flow, dancing the jig and the buck, patting themselves on their whip scarred backs, reveling from night into day. Some went the way of the river, following the Rio Grande, or swimming the upflowing Mississippi, short for Mississippi, maybe, hastening to get as far as they could, thrusting their futures into sanctuary and unknown, friendless territory. Some kept running till a stone on a hill. Oh, some kept running like a stone on a hill, never to grasp a firm place to rest. Some even went to the promised land. Wherever they went, alone or abreast, at the end of their journey, they cried, "I've done my best." Mm. Every year in the Lone Star State and in towns from sea to sea, sons and daughters of the ones who were held, telling the stories that their families passed down, celebrate the day their forebears could shout, "Free at last, hallelujah, I'm free." They will always remember Juneteenth, the day their ancestors could sing, "Free at last, hallelujah, I'm free." There's an author's note in this one. I'm going to read just the first paragraph. Um, the author says, "I came to the world of Juneteenth in the late 1980s when my friend, Miss Maddie Brewer from Texas, proposed we organize a Juneteenth celebration for Santa Barbara. In the preparing for that event, I researched the history and created a handout, The Meaning of Juneteenth. Over the next few years, local groups would organize Juneteenth celebrations. Some years, Maddie would host a Juneteenth celebration at her home. Every year, whether in a community center or at a backyard barbecue, we marked the day." It goes on to explain more, but I encourage you to get the book so that you can read this too. And that is the end of Free at Last. Yes. Hold on. Here we go. So just like
That was such a very powerful poem. I love that deep
well, just like I feel like just like
energy and
me.
meaning behind those Juneteenth poems because you can feel the strength and the struggle in their words, and kind
Mhm.
of I enjoy understanding that part.
And I feel like the author
Great job,
was just like
Felicia.
me. I feel like the author was just like me and learning about Juneteenth a little late, and then spreading.
Felicia, you're muted.
Am I? How am I muted? How am I muted? Can you hear me now? Hello?
Nope, I still can't hear you. So you're muted now.
Hello, hello?
Nope.
Oh, no. Can you hear me now? What? We'll move on.
No, still nothing. I can see your face, so you didn't even have to say anything. Okay. So while Felicia is working on her technical difficulties, I'm going to talk about these two flags. So on your left side, you have the Pan African flag, and on the right, we have the Juneteenth flag. Now, the Pan African flag, it's also known as the Afro American flag, the Black Liberation flag, the UNIA flag, and has various other names. But what the Pan African flag represents is indigenous African people of indigenous African descent. So people that came from Africa or whose ancestors came from Africa, or Black nationalism, which is not the same as some of the other stuff y'all be hearing about. The tricolored flag consists of red,
Mhm.
black, and green, which were colors to also honor Marcus Garvey, whose birthday was August 17th, and it's celebrated as Universal Flag Day. So those colors are celebrated for African American Black nationalism, and African Americans from the diaspora. Now, the Juneteenth flag, on the other hand, that was created in the United States. It was created in 1997 by an artist named Ben Haight. Now, this version was first displayed in 1997, but it wasn't adopted until 2000. So for a long time, the Juneteenth flag was this black, green, and red as a acknowledgement to our Pan African culture. But this flag was created to acknowledge the fact that it was American chattel slavery that we had been freed from. So this is an acknowledgement not only of where our ancestors were freed, but that they were. So that's why you see the red, white, and blue colors. There's a date on the flag that represents General Order Number 3. And that's the day that the issuance came to Galveston, Texas, say, hey, you ain't slaves no more. So um, and that was June 19th, 1865. But beginning in 2020, a lot of states that celebrate Juneteenth do recognize and use the blue, red, and white flag as acknowledgement of, like I said, not just where our ancestors were from, but it is America. So it's an American celebration. Juneteenth is not an
Mhm.
African celebration. It is nothing that was created
Right.
outside of the country. It was created here in America, and it was created to celebrate the final set of enslaved people that were freed. So, um, and also just fun fact, Joe Biden made this the official flag for Juneteenth when he made Juneteenth the federal holiday. So this is our official Juneteenth flag because Juneteenth is what? A federal holiday. And if your job don't give it to you, I'll take it anyway. Uh, I'm kidding. Don't take work advice from me. But yeah, it's just an acknowledgement. So it was also revised in 2000. It was adopted in 2000, and then the date it was added was 2007. So, and the star in the center does represent Texas because everybody knows Texas loves its stars and stripes. So Texas was where those people were found and informed. So the acknowledgement for that is there too. But yes, those are our Juneteenth representation flags. I believe I don't have a official Juneteenth flag, which I need one, but I do have a Pan African flag that has Juneteenth on it. So I need to get an
Mm.
official Juneteenth flag so I can be covered across the diaspora, if you will, making sure my ancestors
Um,
are, here with me. So, all right. And the next story is the story of Juneteenth. So we're going to talk about how they got there and what happened after. So this book is called The Juneteenth Story. Yay. Can y'all see that? Cool. There we go. And the Juneteenth Story, celebrating the end of slavery in the United States, was written by Aaliyah L. Augustini and illustrated by Sawyer Cloud. And Aaliyah says in the story to my grandparents and generations of our ancestors, it's an honor to stand on your shoulders. So, the story of Juneteenth started hundreds of years ago, before it was even celebrated. On July 4th, 1776, Independence Day, America broke away from British rule and was finally able to bask in the light of freedom. But not everyone who lived there was that fortunate. For what would span over 300 years, more than 400,000 African people were stolen from their homes and made to help build the country that became this free America. Though some tried to fight back, they were they and many of their descendants were enslaved, brutally forced to work for no pay, and denied their basic rights. They could not eat what they wanted to eat. They could not play what they wanted to play. They could not live how they wanted to live. And Independence Day did not free them. It would take 89 more years before enslaved people were free. Glimmers of freedom appeared state by state in the new independent America. Vermont was the first to free or emancipate enslaved people in 1777. Slowly, other northern states did too. Some people had long opposed slavery, called abolitionists. They were especially active in the 1830s, fighting slavery's injustice with words and sometimes force. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? Asked abolitionist Frederick Douglass on July 5th, 1852. How can someone who is not free celebrate freedom? But emancipation stopped cold at the southern states. They refused to free enslaved people. Enslaved people's work made lots of money for large southern farms. So in these states, especially, freedom for all was bad for business. Abolitionists worked hard to end slavery. But in some states, enslavers, those who held enslaved people, worked just as hard to keep it going. Although Congressman Abraham Lincoln didn't always believe Black people and white people deserved equal rights, he did believe the idea of slavery was wrong. He was elected president in 1860. 7 southern states did the unthinkable and broke away from the United States of America. They left the nation to form a new country called the Confederate States of America, sometimes called the Confederacy, where slavery would remain legal. On April 12, 1861, the Civil War began. Southern states versus northern states, Confederacy versus the Union. The North entered the war because they did not want the United States to break up into 2 countries. However, eventually the war became a battle to end slavery. As the Civil War continued, President Lincoln took steps to end slavery. On January 1st, 1863, he issued an order called the Emancipation Proclamation. declaring all enslaved people in the now 10 states of the Confederacy forever free. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution was passed 2 years later, after the Civil War ended, officially freeing all enslaved people in the United States. Slavery had become illegal, but in Confederate Texas, enslavers kept that news a secret. The big state of Texas was far from where most of the battles of the Civil War were being fought, so no Union soldiers were close enough to make sure the new laws were followed there. Texas farm owners had crops to harvest and sell. Without enslaved workers, who would pick them? The Civil War had ended, but enslaved Texans were not told the truth. They continued working because they did not know that they were actually free. The Confederacy surrendered to the Union on April 9th, 1865, but it wasn't until June 19th that the Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas. The war now over, he declared his General Order Number 3 from a balcony. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. 900 days after the Emancipation Proclamation, 89 years after Independence Day, and 339 years after the first enslaved Africans came to the land that is now America. The secret was finally out. Freedom now belongs to enslaved people too. Newly freed Texans began to feel the long delayed warmth of liberty's glow. As the news spread, they prayed, ate, and sang in celebration. Others left right away to search for and reunite with long lost family members from whom they had been separated by slavery. June 19th became Jubilee Day. It was their Independence Day. Starting in 1866, families and communities in Texas held the first yearly Jubilee Days celebrations. The next year, the Freedmen's Bureau hosted the first Jubilee Day held in the state capitol and taught formerly enslaved people about the privileges that freedom offered them. Jubilee Day festivities grew as the newly emancipated used their new rights to earn money and purchase property. They bought land and built parks like Emancipation Park in Houston, their own spaces where they could freely gather in their best clothes to barbecue, sing, dance, pray, and play. As many Jubilees days, the Emancipation Proclamation was recited so that everyone could reflect on the words that had changed their lives forever. Jubilee Day became Juneteenth, short for its date, June 19th. Not all Black people saw Juneteenth as a reason to hold big, joyous events. Some felt their pain from enslavement would never be understood by younger generations who hadn't lived through it, so they hosted their own separate gatherings. Others tried to ignore Juneteenth altogether. Slavery was a terrible memory and they preferred not to talk about it. And even though Black people were no longer enslaved, freedom wasn't the same for them it was for other Americans. As the 1900s around, new laws spread throughout the South, limiting Black people's rights and keeping Black and white people separate. Called Jim Crow laws, these rules made it hard for many Black people to have access to opportunities like good jobs and education. Black people couldn't even enjoy parks where only whites were allowed, forcing many Juneteenth festivities to be held far outside of town. Between Jim Crow major events of the early 1900s, like the World War and the Great Depression, Juneteenth began to lose its shine. During World War I, some people considered the celebration not American, a reminder of a sad time not worth talking about. During the Great Depression of 1929 to 1939, people didn't have extra time or money to use to host fairs and parties. But Juneteenth remained in the hearts of many Black Texans. In 1936, after little years of attention, parts of Juneteenth reignited with a momentary bang. The Texas Centennial Exposition welcomed more than 46,000 Black visitors to a huge Juneteenth celebration to open its groundbreaking Hall of Negro Life, an entire building dedicated to famous Black inventors, scholars, celebrities, and more. It featured huge murals of illustrating the history of Black Texans. Pride burned in the hearts of everyone who participated. As the time passed, Black people, especially in the South, grew tired of Jim Crow laws casting shadows on their rights. Many moved north and west for better opportunities. Some also worked together to fight back as part of the Civil Rights Movement. Juneteenth spread as Black Texans moved across America and shared their traditions in their new cities. In the Civil Rights Movement, activists made Juneteenth a part of the 1968 Poor People's Campaign in Washington, D.C., a march for fair access to jobs and housing for people without them. More than 50,000 people took part, and many brought Juneteenth with them back to their homes around the country. In the 1970s, as America prepared to mark 200 years of independence, many Black people remembered Frederick Douglass's words and realized something. Their freedom was not 200 years old. For some, Juneteenth now symbolized their Independence Day. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Buffalo, New York, and more cities well beyond Texas, new Juneteenth traditions came to life. Families reunited, learned about heritage, paraded, barbecued, and celebrated together. Their festivals grew larger each year. In Texas, Juneteenth festivities continued, and some celebrations, like Austin's, which had stopped for 25 years, were revived. In more than 110 years after the first Juneteenth, State Representative Al Edwards succeeded in making it an official state holiday in 1979. Though Juneteenth has long been recognized in many communities, most Americans still didn't know about it or its history. But a series of horrific events in the weeks before Juneteenth 2020 and a resurgence of Black Lives Matter protests in response put long overdue spotlight on how poorly Black people have continued to be treated in America. Those events and decades-long efforts of activists and government officials helped Juneteenth finally start to get the national attention it deserves. And on June 17, 2021, over 150 years since the first Jubilee Day, it was made an official American holiday. Falling just weeks before Independence Day each year, Juneteenth is a time to remember and celebrate our enslaved ancestors, strength and perseverance. But it also reminds us to keep working toward the American dream, liberty and justice for all. So we have a timeline, and we're going to read them. Emancipation Day, which is Juneteenth, is the best known nationwide celebration of the end of enslavement, though it has Texas roots. However, Emancipation Day has been observed on other dates locally in other states and districts as well: Washington, D.C., Florida, Maryland, and others. It coincides with many landmark dates, so states' notification of freedom or their ratification passing of legislation outlawing enslavement, the signing of the 13th Amendment, and even the abolition of African enslavement in other regions like the Caribbean. While Texas was the last state in the Confederacy to notify its enslaved people of the emancipation of slavery was still legal in the Union border states, Maryland, Missouri, Delaware, and Kentucky, until the 13th Amendment was ratified December 1865. So we have a timeline of the original chattel slave movement. So it started in 1526 when Spanish enslavers kidnapped African people and tempted them to take them to a colony. Colony now is what, near South Carolina or Georgia, because it was both. 1619, the first known existence of enslaved African people kidnapped from Angola by English enslavers to the English colony Jamestown and what is now Virginia. 1808, the Act of Prohibiting Importation of Slaves in 1807 takes effect, which means it was illegal to own slaves. Then April 12th, to April 9th, 1861 to 1865 was the Civil War in America. January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation takes effect, with Lincoln using his wartime rights as commander in chief to free enslaved people. January 31st, 1865, the First Amendment, 13th Amendment is passed by the House of Representatives, making enslavement illegal. June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger arrives in Galveston, Texas, and delivers General Order Number 3, telling enslaved people they are free. June 19th, 1866, the first Jubilee Day or Emancipation Day was held in Texas. 1872, Houston's Emancipation Park is built on land purchased by formerly enslaved residents to be used for Juneteenth. Late 1800s, June 19th, also known as Jubilee Day or Emancipation Day in Texas, unofficially becomes June 14th. 1936, federally funded groundbreaking Hall of Negro Life exhibit draws more than 46,000 Black Texans to celebrate Juneteenth at the Texas Centennial Exposition. 1968, the Poor People's Campaign, led by Ralph David Abernathy and Coretta Scott King, after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, uses Juneteenth to close out the campaign. 1976, Buffalo, New York was first Juneteenth celebration as other celebrations emerged throughout America. 1979, Juneteenth is declared a Texas state holiday, pushed by the efforts of State Representative Al Edwards. 2020, Juneteenth gets the national spotlight as the country witnesses the brutal race-driven murder of George Floyd at the hands of the police in May 2020, inspiring a surge of Black Lives Matter protests and acknowledgement of Juneteenth as emancipation holiday. In June 2021, President Joe Biden signs legislation making Juneteenth a federal holiday, the first federal holiday added to the calendar in nearly 40 years. And that is that.
Can you hear me now? You can't hear
my
me.
Juneteenth story. It's good. That was a good story. I thought we had read that book before, but we didn't. Reading through it, I don't think I've ever read that story. Felicia, did you read the Juneteenth story? Oh, I still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're still audioless.
So
I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear what's coming out. Can you hear me?
yes,
Okay,
I can hear you clearly.
but I
And
cannot hear you. That is so strange. I don't know what's
I
happening.
don't know.
Okay. So while we try to get Felicia situated,
Can you hear me now?
no, I still can't hear you now. Well, Felicia works on that. I read Frederick Douglass's essay, "What Does the 4th of July Mean to a Slave?" And that always sat with me heavily because 4th of July was something we just celebrated. You know, it's America's 200, but in that point, every American wasn't
Hello?
free. You know, and there's still a bunch of Americans that don't celebrate the 4th because
Hello.
the ancestry wasn't free. You know, so the 4th of July is an American holiday, and that is very true. But so is Juneteenth because Juneteenth celebrates the freedom of everybody. And while everybody wasn't free or even allowed to celebrate freedom on July 4th, because even if you were free, you didn't have the same freedoms as someone who wasn't formerly enslaved. You know, so Juneteenth is very important to honor those people who did not have those freedoms and did not get the space to fight for those freedoms the way they deserved or earned. So, yeah, Juneteenth is extremely important to us as a people. Okay, Felicia hit the mute button. Let's see if it.
Hello.
No. What is happening? Why are you muted?
Can you hear me? It's up so loud. I don't. Hold on. Recording. Michelle, you're gonna have to cut that part out because the part previous, my mic somehow did not work. I don't know what happened.
That was so strange.
But it kept showing the microphone level going up. So every time I changed it to a different mic, excuse me, a different mic, it kept showing what I was when I was talking. So I was so confused.
That's insane.
Let us move on to the next song now that you can clearly hear me.
Yay.
This one is The More We Get Together is the Drag Story Hour favorite. We're going to go through the hand motions and you can sing it along with us. So it's The More We Get Together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Because your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. Oh, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Okay? Was that good?
That was
Okay.
good.
Okay, here we go. Now sing along with us. I know you have your singing voices ready. All right? So the more we get
We get
together, the more we get
we get
together,
together,
the happier we'll
will be.
be. Because your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. Oh, the more we get together, the happier we'll
Will be.
be. Yes.
Yay.
All right. And on to the next story. With togetherness, history is made. Now, this is not necessarily a Juneteenth story, but I feel like it falls in line because of said um, freedoms and struggles that people of color have faced, specifically Black people. Um, it continues and has continued on. Even after Juneteenth, um, folks had to fight to vote, had to fight for other freedoms so that you could even drink out of the same water fountain. Imagine that. Um, this next book is called The Unstoppable, or Unstoppable: How Bayard Rustin organized the 1963 March on Washington. Now, I feel like I always say his name different ways, and I've heard it different ways over the years. So if you have a correct way of saying it, put the phonetic in the comments, and I will do more research. But
I
right now,
was told it's Bayard, like Bay, like you say both Y's.
uh,
So you say like Bayard.
hmm,
Because I mean
I'll
that's
give it
how
a
it's
shot.
spelled. So phonetically I would think that correct, but you know.
So if you hear me say it like two different ways, that's because now I'm trying all different kinds of ways to say the name. So let us get into it. Right? Unstoppable: How Bayard Rustin organized the 1963 March on Washington. Inside are demands. We'll learn a little bit about these demands, but let's read them real quick. Comprehensive and effective civil rights legislation from the present Congress without compromise or filibuster to guarantee all Americans access to all public accommodations, decent housing, adequate and integrated education, the right to vote. Two, withholding of federal funds from all programs in which discrimination exists. Three, desegregation of all school districts in 1963. Four, enforcement of the 14th Amendment, reducing congressional representation of states where citizens are disfranchised, a new executive order banning discrimination in all housing supported by federal funds, authority for the Attorney General to institute injunctive suits when any constitutional right is violated, a massive federal program to train and place all unemployed workers, it says in here, Negro and white, on meaningful and dignified jobs at decent wages, a national minimum wage act that will give all Americans a decent standard of living. Government surveys show anything less than $2 an hour fails to do this. A broadening Fair Labor Standards Act to include all areas of employment which are presently excluded. Number 10, a federal Fair Employment Practices Act barring discrimination by federal, state, and municipal governments and by employers, contractors, employment agencies, and trade unions. Amazing how some of these are still, sorry, still things that we ask for today. But onward we go. Unstoppable, how Bayard Rustin organized the 1963 March on Washington, written by Michael G. Long and illustrated by Bay Jackson. Bayard Rustin was a troublemaker. Bayard grew up in Westchester, Pennsylvania, where white business owners and city officials wanted to separate Black and white people in places like elementary schools, restaurants, and movie theaters. But Bayard didn't care. In high school, he sat in the white section of the town's main movie theater. The police arrested him even though there were no laws requiring segregation. Now, segregation is when you have one set of people sit here, and you have another set of people, in this case, sit there. They wanted them to sit separately. A few years later, he was arrested again, this time for sitting next to white people on a bus. Bayard was making trouble for a good reason. He wanted to change the laws and customs that kept Black people from living freely. Mm-hmm. Bayard wasn't the only one challenging unjust laws. As an adult, Bayard lived in New York City near his mentor, A. Philip Randolph, who had long fought for the rights of Black workers throughout the 1940s and 50s. They shared their dreams of freedom. They dreamed of schools where Black and white children could learn together. They dreamed of good, safe jobs that paid well. They dreamed of decent homes and being treated with respect and dignity. Mm-hmm. But there were powerful people and forces determined to keep their dreams from coming true. So Bayard and Mr. Randolph would have to fight. Bayard was a peaceful man how could he fight without being violent? And how could he make enough trouble to shake the whole nation? This picture illustrates some not so nice things that would happen when Black people wouldn't, I don't know what to say, that when they wouldn't obey, you know, or when they challenged the norm that was set. Mhm. Bayard was inspired by a man named Mahatma Gandhi, also a troublemaker fighting for freedom. Gandhi took on the entire British Empire using rallies, strikes, and marches to free India from British rule. His most famous protest was a massive march to the Indian Ocean that received worldwide attention. This march inspired people across the globe to protest for their own rights. We can march too, Bayard thought. Mhm. We can march too. In 1962, Mr. Randolph and Bayard imagined the largest march for civil rights that the United States had ever seen. Bayard had already organized many protests against war, nuclear weapons, racial segregation in public schools, and racial discrimination in businesses. Now he could lead a civil rights protest to the doorstep of the United States government, right up to the doors. Bayard and Mr. Randolph called it the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The march would demand that politicians end discrimination by passing laws without delay. They wanted immediate action that could be felt everywhere in the country. If it worked, the march would be a massive victory for the civil rights movement. It was a great plan, but Bayard faced a big challenge. Wonder what challenge that was. Question is, could he do it? Powerful people and forces who did not want black equality threatened to destroy the movement. Some white politicians attacked Bayard for many things, including for being gay. Bayard was living in a time when it was illegal to live and love as he pleased. Some civil rights leaders worried the attacks on Bayard would harm the fight for black freedom. They didn't want him to be part of the fight. They didn't want him to be part of the fight, but Bayard was proud of who he was, black, gay, and an activist for peace and freedoms. You know. Bayard feared his dream was over. Other movement leaders, including future Congressman John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr., strongly disagreed. They admired Bayard and believed his planning skills were too valuable to lose. They made sure Bayard was the main organizer of the march. They said, "Don't listen to those people. We got things to do." There was no time to celebrate. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was only 8 weeks away. Bayard and his staff of over 200 volunteers got to work. They called newspaper offices, television stations, families and schools, churches and synagogues, labor unions and community groups. In some ways, I would argue it was easier to spread the word back in the day. I would argue. They organized travel on buses, trains, and planes to bring people from all over the country. They built first aid stations for lunches and even rented 200 portable toilets. No detail escaped Bayard's attention. Every detail. Even lunch. I didn't say lunch, but it's drawn right here. On Bayard's One of Bayard's main goals was to educate protesters about being non-violent fighting. Black protesters in the United States had faced horrible violence. Bayard wanted everyone to be prepared for the worst, and he didn't want them to hit back. Instead of making fists, they were told to hold signs about freedom. Instead of kicking, they should walk from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial. Instead of shouting ugly names, they would sing beautiful songs. On August 28th, 1963, Bayard woke up early and walked the Washington Monument. Only a few hundred marchers had arrived. Bayard was scared that people might not come. His worries soon disappeared. By 9:30 a.m., 40,000 people were ready to march. Then there were 90,000. The protesters kept coming. The excitement kept building. Oh, I didn't show you the picture for that. By the time the march began, about 250,000 people had arrived. They wanted to vote with their footsteps and raised their voices so loud that the president himself would have to answer. Mhm. And with these brave protesters, Dr. King shared his dream for freedom. And at the end of the day, Bayard and Mr. Randolph took a moment to reflect on all that had happened. They knew the fight was not over, but the March on Washington marked a bold new step toward justice. Their protests shook the nation, and in the coming years, powerful people and forces would pass laws that were right and fair. Bayard Rustin was a troublemaker, and his dream of change had finally come true. Mhm. Let's see. Uh, quick author's note. Born on March 17, 1912, Bayard Rustin was raised by his grandparents, Julia and Jennifer Rustin, in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Julia taught him the Quaker belief that every person was worth has equal worth and dignity. Bayard detested the unfair treatment he received because of the color of his skin and developed a reputation for resisting discrimination. That is awesome. But there's a lot of things that happen that we talked about in the book. But fast forward, um, Bayard continued to fight for human rights across the globe, and with encouragement of his partner, Walter, Bayard publicly supported gay and lesbian rights. President Barack Obama awarded Bayard the Presidential Medal of Freedom, um, after his death on November 20th, 2013. His partner accepted the award in a White House ceremony. When speaking of Bayard, President Obama said, "For decades, this great leader, often at Dr. King's side, was denied his rightful place in history because he was openly gay. No medal can change that, but today we honor Bayard Rustin's memory by taking our place in his march toward true equality, no matter who we are and who we love." So that was Unstoppable: How Bayard Rustin Organized the 1963 March on Washington. And it's very interesting to me that there are a lot of people of color that are either gay or lesbian that hold places in our history,
Mm-hmm.
um, that we don't learn about like up front or in our history books. Um, it's so interesting, very interesting.
Um, Not to divert too much from Juneteenth, but do you remember the first person that actually refused to give up their seat on the bus? And no, it was not Rosa Parks.
Oh, I know. Just tell me.
Okay, her name was Claudette Colvin. She
Mhm.
was 15 years old, and the reason that they didn't want to tell her story is because A, she was 15 and she was pregnant, but also because she identified as a lesbian. So they didn't want
Damn.
to have that be the forefront of the civil rights movement. This unwed, pregnant lesbian teenager did not seem to fit it. But Rosa Parks happened to fit it, and Rosa Parks had a little bit of an in because her husband at the time was a co-chair in the NAACP.
Mhm.
So she had a little bit of a in, but this
She
person
had
who
a little
had
bit of clout.
a little bit, a little bit. It was a little a referral, if you will. Uh, but
You
yeah,
know,
Claudette
she
Colvin was the first person. So it was kind of interesting to learn that and be able to teach that because that's not something that we're taught in history. And it was Rosa Parks
and
was the first person.
now you all know.
Now everybody knows. Now we know. Look, we're spreading history. But Bayard Rustin finding out that he was openly gay and was by Dr. King's side was something that like changed the trajectory of how I looked at Dr. King also because he was so about Christian love and black people being united for him to join forces and be connected with someone who at the time was seen to be less than or
Mm,
not enough spoke very highly to who he was as a person. So shout out Dr. King.
yes, yes, love that. Which gives you a little more, just more respect that was there. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
you're like our people, our people, our
And
people.
look, um, I used to hear young when I was younger, I was black and gay, but I had to pick because I was black first. And then it
Oh
was like, yeah,
no!
I used to be told, you may be black and gay, but you're black first. And it's like
Oh
there's
no!
no forefront. Yes, black comes before gay because just in English it sounds
Oh,
correct. But
I was born both.
yeah, it doesn't. I'm not less black and I'm not less gay. Hell, in June, I am extra of both. I'm like super
Here we
black and gay.
are with Juneteenth. Here we are.
Juneteenth and Pride, like, look at that. Like, hello. I'm like black, gay. Hey.
Yeah, do
So we
it.
celebrate
Do-
both. So we like to acknowledge those who came before us, who fought
Yes,
for the freedoms that we have to be openly black and
all
gay.
the way, all the way, all the way.
So thank you, Bayard. Thank you
Yes.
for the sacrifices, friend.
Well, it seems that we've come to the end of our story hour, and it's always
Oh,
so hard to say goodbye. But, friends, I enjoyed the story hour, and I encourage you to get the books. You can either scan this code over here on the far side, or you can go to the bookshop for Drag Story Hour and help support us as you purchase a book. See how that works? You purchase the book, you get your book, you support us. Yeah, you did it. You did it.
it's a full
But
thing for everybody.
yeah, it's like you're supporting everyone. There you go. So we have one more song, and then we're out of here. And then, so this one is "We Wave Goodbye Like This." So we wave goodbye like this. We wave goodbye like this. We clap our hands for all our friends. We wave goodbye like this. Okay, so we're gonna do it a couple more times. We'll let you sing along, and then we'll do a really fast version of it. Okay, you ready? Okay, we wave
We
goodbye
wave
like
like
this.
this.
We wave
We wave
goodbye like
goodbye like
this.
this.
We
We
clap
clap
our hands
our
for
hands
all our
for
friends. We wave goodbye like
like
this.
this. Do you want to say goodbye, Nugget? Okay. Nugget wants to wave goodbye too. So he's gonna
Okay,
wave goodbye. Okay.
can
You
Nugget do
ready?
it fast?
Yes.
Okay, we
You
wave
ready?
goodbye like this. We wave goodbye like this. We clap our hands for all our friends. We wave goodbye like this. And for that, good afternoon, good evening, have a great day, and celebrate Juneteenth with your friends and family. Be sure to follow Drag Story Hour AZ on Instagram, or you can go to our website at dragstoryhouraz.org and look for more events, either virtual or in person, coming up soon. And with that, I wish you a great day.
That is
I'm
Felicia Minor. I am
yeah.
Sassy. Thanks for reading with us.
Bye. It doesn't play.
Oh, I
Thank
still
you.
said recording.